Welcome back to Mission of the Chosen. Tonight we uncover how whispers turn into sirens, how gossip becomes a courtroom, and why the same voices that mocked you now echo your name everywhere. This isn't tea, it's sirens in the night. Sirens stop traffic, freeze conversations, and force everyone to pay attention. That's you right now. Your very existence has become the flashing red and blue light cutting through the silence of their lies. People don't obsess over nobodies or failures. They obsess over survivors. You endured betrayal, schemes, and lies, and yet you're still here, still shining. That alone eats them alive, because your rise reminds them of their own stagnation. Picture a courtroom set up in the middle of the street. They arrive smug, folders of false stories in hand, ready to laugh at your expense. But the universe storms in, flips the tables, and their papers catch fire. Suddenly, you're not on trial anymore, they are. Every scar you carry becomes testimony. Every hardship becomes proof of their guilt. Psychologists say gossip spreads not because of truth, but because it triggers fear and curiosity. That's why the same people who claim they didn't care can't stop whispering your name. Your resilience unsettles them. Your glow exposes their excuses. Their obsession was never about weakness, it was about you being untouchable. And here's the twist. They thought they owned your story, that they could bury it under mockery and lies. But truth doesn't stay buried. Your quiet growth turned into thunder they can't silence. People they idolize are now saying your name in circles they can't enter. That's what cuts deepest. You didn't chase it. You didn't beg for approval. While they performed for attention, you evolved. Imagine the same halls where your name was once spit out like poison, now it's spoken with weight. It's currency. It's respect. It echoes in places they'll never touch. That burns them because your existence without their permission humiliates everything they built on lies. Sociologists note that people laugh most at what they fear. Their mockery was never proof of your weakness, it was proof they already sensed your difference. They feared you would rise, and now that fear has come true. So let me ask you, don't you feel it? That strange pull when your name won't stay quiet, when even silence carries weight. If this message is hitting your spirit, drop a 777 inches the comments so I know you hear it, because we're only getting started. The same mouths that laughed at you are now choking on your name because the universe turned their whispers into sirens. That's the reality shaking the streets right now. The same eyes that once delighted in your downfall are now being forced to watch karma play out in high definition. Back then, your struggles weren't just witnessed, they were savored. Some people leaned back and folded their arms like they were front row at a show. Others acted neutral, but deep down they grinned when the crowd turned against you. They thought your humiliation was a movie with a tragic ending, with you playing the disposable character who fades into silence. But every story has a sequel, and the sequel rewrites the script. The universe doesn't just recycle energy, it amplifies it. What they threw out returns, louder, brighter, undeniable. Suddenly, the stage they mocked you on becomes their stage, and their cruelty is projected for the whole community to see. Picture this: a theater packed wall to wall. In Act 1, you were center stage, stumbling, carrying the weight of betrayal, rejection, and ridicule, while they laughed at your every misstep. The curtains fell, and they thought it was over. But Act 2 opens, and the spotlight turns. Now they are the ones trembling under the lights. Their gossip becomes bloopers. Their cruelty turns into comedy reels. Their lies loop back as punchlines. And the crowd, the very same audience that clapped when you suffered, is laughing at them, not with them, at them. That's the savage twist they never foresaw. Your survival became the plot twist that made their entire performance collapse. Because you didn't just make it through, you rose. And your rise turned their enjoyment into regret. The smiles they flashed while you struggled now haunt them like broken mirrors. Here's the reality. Energy never evaporates. It collects. The universe doesn't forget a single tear you shed, not a single humiliation you endured. Silence isn't absence, it's evidence stacking. Every insult, every smirk, every scheme, it all built a file thicker than any defense they could prepare. And when the verdict finally landed, it hit them with interest. That's why their karma feels 10 times heavier than the pain you went through. Let's break it down. When you suffered, it strengthened you. You stitched scars into armor. You discovered resilience in your lowest places. You learned to breathe fire out of ashes. Meanwhile, they built their confidence on lies, shortcuts, and cruelty. So when the crash hit, they had nothing to lean on. You had strength, they had nothing. You rose, they crumbled. That's the difference. Now the paranoia is eating them alive. They can't sleep, tossing at 2 or 3 in the morning, wondering who knows what, who remembers what, who's replaying their words in whispers. They scroll endlessly, checking who posted what, terrified their carefully painted mask will slip in front of the wrong eyes. Their guilt has become their noose. You don't even have to say a word, your silence is louder than a shout. Think of it like this. Once, they were spectators at a fight. You in the ring, absorbing hit after hit while the crowd roared against you. They thought you'd stay down, bloodied and broken. But you got up, you trained in silence, you built strength from every blow, and when the bell rang again, you weren't the one stepping into the ring, it was them. But this time the punches aren't coming from you, they're coming from life itself. And life doesn't pull punches. Here's the poetry in it. You didn't need revenge, you didn't need to drag their name or beg for vindication, you just healed, you just kept moving. And in that stillness, karma gathered every receipt, every timestamp, every crooked laugh. It stacked the evidence until the case was airtight. Now their downfall isn't just happening, it's televised. Public, unavoidable, irreversible. That's why their shame feels louder than your suffering ever did. Because your suffering built you, but their karma is breaking them. You turned pain into progress. They turned your pain into entertainment. And the universe doesn't let that slide. The same silence they used to dismiss you is now suffocating them, crushing them under guilt they can't outrun. Imagine a mirror in the middle of the street. When you walked past it, they mocked your reflection. Now that same mirror is turned on them, and the whole town is watching. Every betrayal, every cruel word, every smirk is being replayed in their own reflection, and they can't look away. They don't get to change the channel. Karma holds the remote now. Let's pause and ask the real question. Why does their downfall feel so heavy, so messy, so humiliating? The answer is simple. Because while your suffering prepared you, their cruelty weakened them. They were building on illusions. You were building on truth. So when life flipped the switch, their illusions collapsed like sandcastles against the tide. And you stood, unshaken, because your foundation was real. And here's the sweetest irony, you're not even watching with bitterness. You're not in the crowd, clapping for their downfall. You're in the balcony, calm, sipping your drink, watching life roll the credits on a movie they wrote but can't control. Their exposure doesn't need your energy. It's happening all on its own. So let me ask you, have you noticed it? The way people who once ignored you now can't look away. The same silence they used to weaponize now feels like panic. Doesn't it feel strange how your glow speaks louder than their entire network of lies? That's not coincidence. That's karma at work. If you're nodding right now, drop a sit in the comments. Not because emojis fix anything, but because your agreement seals the truth. You know exactly what this message is about. You've lived it. And the fact you're still standing means their downfall has only just begun. The same mouths that laughed at you are now choking on your name because the universe turned their whispers into sirens. That's the reality shaking the streets right now. Your pain became their paper trail, and they never realized the universe was keeping receipts. While they huddled in corners, whispering and scheming, convinced they were safe, every move was being documented not by cameras, not by phones, but by the energy of life itself. They thought silence meant safety, but silence was just the red light blinking on the cosmic recorder, capturing everything. They laughed when you cried, smirked when you stumbled, and plotted while you healed. But here's what they didn't know. Every insult they spat, every rumor they spread, every tear they forced from you, became evidence logged in a vault they could never reach. They weren't mocking you, they were testifying against themselves. Imagine this for a moment. A security camera mounted high, blinking silently, recording every second. You didn't see it, but it saw you, your pain, your survival, your resilience. And it saw them, their cruelty, their manipulation, their attempts to crush what couldn't be crushed. Years later, the footage plays back, and every frame exposes them, not you. That's how the universe works. It doesn't rush. It waits. It lets patterns form, lets lies tangle themselves into knots, lets egos dig their own graves. That's why you wondered sometimes, why didn't justice come sooner? Why did it feel like I was left to suffer? The truth is, cases aren't built overnight. Evidence stacks, receipts pile up, and when the drawer finally opens, it's airtight. That's why their fall looks so brutal now, because it's the weight of everything they thought they got away with crashing down at once. And here's the irony, they thought they were narrating your downfall. They thought their gossip was your obituary. They thought their laughter was the soundtrack to your ending. But really, they were writing confessions in invisible ink, stamped across their own names. Every cruel word was another line of testimony against themselves. Every scheme was another signed affidavit in a cosmic courtroom. They never realized they were the defendants the entire time. Let's go deeper. Why does their exposure feel so public, so loud, so undeniable? Because truth has a strange way of surfacing. It doesn't whisper forever, it breaks like thunder. The story they twisted is straightening itself out, snapping back into alignment like bent steel. People are waking up, masks are slipping, the cover-ups aren't covering anymore. The truth is breaking through cracks in conversations, in friendships, in reputations they thought were untouchable. You didn't force it, you didn't campaign for it, you just kept moving forward, and life itself did the heavy lifting. That's why you can sit calm while they panic at 3 a.m., checking who knows what, who remembers what, who's connecting dots. Their paranoia is proof. The more restless they are, the more guilty they feel. And guilt has a way of screaming louder than words ever could. Here's a picture for you. Think of someone planting fake evidence at a crime scene. They're so desperate to frame you that they don't realize they've dropped their own fingerprints all over the room. Later, investigators show up, and guess what? Every print points back to them. That's what happened here. In trying so hard to bury you, they buried themselves. And maybe you've asked, why me? Why was I the target? The answer cuts deep. People don't go after emptiness. They only attack what threatens them. They came for you because you carried something undeniable. Your peace mocked their chaos. Your growth exposed their stagnation. Your very existence reminded them of what they could never fake. You didn't need to brag, you were proof in motion. And proof is the one thing envy can't destroy. Think about it. They didn't attack you because you were nothing. They attacked because you were evidence that integrity still wins, that light still blinds darkness, that quiet consistency still outshines cheap applause. Your existence alone was the receipt they could never rip up, so they tried to discredit it, bury it, erase it. But every attempt only left another trail pointing back to them. Now the universe is replaying the footage. Their whispers are echoing louder than they ever meant. The shadows they thought were safe are being lit up, and the cruelest twist of all, you don't even need to say a word. Your survival is the testimony. Your glow is the receipt. Your rise is the loudspeaker blasting their guilt. So let me ask you, don't you feel it? That strange shift when lies don't stick anymore, when silence feels louder than shouting, when your very presence rattles people who once laughed. That's not random. That's receipts being revealed. That's karma serving subpoenas. If you've noticed this in your own life, doors opening while secrets around you collapse, drop a in the comments. It means you see it, too. It means the receipts are surfacing right where they belong. The same mouths that laughed at you are now choking on your name because the universe turned their whispers into sirens. That's the reality shaking the streets right now. The sirens weren't just noise in the night. They weren't just a passing alarm or random chaos. Those sirens were karma's strike team arriving, kicking down doors, pulling secrets into the open. They thought silence meant safety, but silence was simply the universe loading the case against them, building the evidence they couldn't erase. When karma enforces, it doesn't arrive politely. It storms in like a raid. That's why their peace is gone, why their confidence is cracking, why the ground beneath them feels like it's giving way. They once laughed at your pain, thinking it made them untouchable, but the same laughter now sounds hollow in their throats because the walls are closing in. Imagine this life issues a warrant in the middle of the night, doors kicked down, lights flashing, no warning, no escape. That's what's happening to them, not in their homes, but in their influence, their reputations, their fake power. The doors they leaned on are being ripped off the hinges. Their carefully painted masks are peeling, and the silence they counted on is turned into sirens that everyone hears. They believed they had all the time in the world. They mistook your quiet for weakness. They assumed that because you weren't clapping back, nothing was happening. But that's the biggest mistake people make, confusing silence with absence. While you were healing, the universe was building a case file thick with their betrayals. Every lie, every manipulation, every act of cruelty got added to the ledger, and when the moment came, karma showed up with no mercy. You can see it in the way their lives are unraveling now, friendships collapsing, support disappearing, calls going unanswered. The influence they once bragged about is shrinking like water slipping through their fingers, and they can't understand why. They can't trace it to you because you didn't lift a hand. You kept your side clean. You didn't go digging. That's what makes it worse for them. Their collapse isn't coming from revenge. It's coming from truth. Let's be clear. This isn't paperwork. This isn't human justice. This is the highest courtroom, the one where excuses don't matter, where manipulation has no power, where the verdict can't be altered. And the verdict has already been stamped across their lives. Guilty. You might ask yourself, why now? Why is everything crashing at this moment? Because timing is everything. Karma doesn't waste effort. It waits until the exposure will hit hardest, until the downfall is public enough to match the humiliation they tried to force on you. And now the lights are flashing, the noise is blaring. Their shadows are being dragged into the daylight. Picture their panic. They shuffle through their own excuses, try to call in favors, try to patch leaks with lies. But the more they scramble, the faster the walls collapse. The people who once cheered them on are backing away. Their own words are looping back on them. It's not you pointing fingers, it's their own contradictions catching up. And here's the irony: while they run in circles, trying to plug holes in their sinking ship, you're calm, you're focused on your lane, you're healing, growing, rising. That's why it hits them even harder, because you're not even fighting them, and still, they're losing. Let's pause here. Can you see how poetic that is? The very silence they used to dismiss you became the weapon that undid them. The very absence they mocked is what gave space for karma to strike. That's why their unraveling looks like chaos in real time. Because when the universe raids, it leaves nothing hidden. And maybe you're feeling that strange satisfaction, not gloating, but relief. Relief that the storm wasn't random. Relief that your pain wasn't ignored. Relief that silence didn't mean defeat, it meant preparation. The sirens you're hearing in your spirit right now are not warnings for you, they're justice for them. So let me ask you, do you feel it? That shift in the air, when secrets slip through cracks, when guilt replaces arrogance, when people who once laughed suddenly go quiet? That's not paranoia. That's karma knocking. If this resonates, drop a 10 in the comments. It's your way of saying you hear the sirens too, and you know they aren't here for you. They're here for the ones who thought silence was a shield. The same mouths that laughed at you are now choking on your name because the universe turned their whispers into sirens. That's the reality shaking the streets right now. They didn't attack you because you were weak. They attacked you because you were walking, breathing evidence of everything they could never be. That's the truth they'll never say out loud. Your existence was proof of resilience, proof of light, proof of possibility, and it scared them. Think about it. Why do people throw stones at glass they can't crack? Because the shine irritates them. Your peace mocked their chaos. Your persistence exposed their laziness. Your kindness threw a spotlight on their cruelty. You didn't even realize how powerful you were at the time, but they felt it, and they panicked. Imagine a thief caught under a bright spotlight. The brighter the light shines, the harder it is for them to hide their guilt. That's what your presence did. You didn't need to point fingers or expose their lies. Just by being yourself, you revealed every crack in their character, and they couldn't handle it. That's why the betrayal kept coming. That's why the smear campaigns were so consistent. They weren't trying to understand you, they were trying to erase the evidence you carried. Because your existence alone was proof they had failed. They couldn't build what you built, they couldn't endure what you endured. And instead of facing their own emptiness, they tried to break you down so they could feel safe again. But here's where it backfired. Every scar they left behind only confirmed your strength. Every attempt to silence you carved your name deeper into the story. They tried to crush the evidence, but instead they stamped it permanent. The more they fought you, the more undeniable you became. Picture this: A courtroom where they desperately try to destroy documents that prove their guilt. They rip, they burn, they hide, thinking no one will ever know. But in their panic, they leave fingerprints on every shred. Those fingerprints are their downfall. The harder they worked to erase you, the clearer the evidence became that you were real. And maybe you've asked yourself, why me? Why was I the target? The answer is harsh but liberating. They only go after those who carry something undeniable. They didn't see you as weak, they saw you as proof of everything they couldn't fake. You were evidence in motion, and they were terrified that the world would see it. So they tried to break the mirror instead of facing the reflection, but the mirror didn't shatter, it multiplied. Now your story is reflecting everywhere, on streets, in conversations, even in circles they thought would never mention you. What they tried to bury has become the headline. And here's the sweetest irony, you didn't even need to prove yourself. You just kept going, quietly, consistently, stubbornly, and while you built, their desperation exposed them. The universe has a way of making proof louder than gossip, and right now, your survival is screaming. So let me turn this to you, don't you see it? How your very presence unsettles people who once thought they had power over you. Doesn't it feel strange how the ones who tried hardest to erase you are the ones most haunted by your name? That's not chance. That's proof. If this resonates, drop a bot in the comments. Not just as a sign of agreement, but as a reminder to yourself, you are evidence that pressure doesn't break diamonds. It makes them shine harder. The same mouths that laughed at you are now choking on your name because the universe turned their whispers into sirens. That's the reality, shaking the streets right now. Their gossip was never just idle chatter. It was a signed confession they didn't realize they were giving. Every time they whispered your name in the dark, they thought they were cutting you down. But in reality, every word was a breadcrumb trail leading straight back to their envy. Think of it like this, a courtroom filled with laughter. They think they're joking with the jury, tossing words around carelessly. But the court reporter is typing every syllable, turning jokes into official testimony. That's exactly what happened. While they laughed, the universe recorded. While they whispered, life kept the receipts. Their gossip wasn't destroying you, it was documenting them. They believed they were writing your obituary, but in truth, they were signing their own statements of guilt. The words they used for entertainment have come back as subpoenas, stamped with their names. Every smirk, every side comment, every exaggerated story, it's all evidence now. And here's the thing about gossip, it travels fast, but it doesn't age well. Lies sprint ahead, but truth is patient. Truth waits, and when the dust settles, truth is still standing. That's what's happening right now. People are finally connecting dots. They're realizing the version of you painted in gossip doesn't match the version of you standing here today. And suddenly, the loudest mouths have gone quiet. Imagine their panic. They replay old conversations in their heads, wondering who remembers what, who saved screenshots, who retells their words. The rope they wove for you is tightening around their own throats. They thought they buried you with words, but all they did was bury themselves under proof. And the public is noticing. The whispers aren't about you anymore, they're about them. Their contradictions are exposed. Their stories don't line up. Their smugness is dissolving into paranoia. The town is buzzing again, but this time, the punchline is flipped. You're not the joke anymore. They are. Let's bring it closer. Have you noticed how quickly people scatter when truth begins to align? How the once bold voices suddenly stutter, hesitate, and retreat into silence? That's not guilt hiding, that's guilt confessing. The truth is louder than their words now, and no matter how badly they want to take it back, they can't. Because gossip is like ink spilled on a page. Once it's out, you can't erase it, you can only reveal who spilled it. And right now, their hands are stained for everyone to see. So let me ask you, doesn't it feel strange how their silence now feels louder than their gossip ever did? Doesn't it feel like the story has flipped on its own, without you lifting a finger? That's not coincidence. That's justice. If this message is resonating, drop a T in the comments. Let it stand as your reminder that gossip was never about truth. It was a confession in disguise, and now the universe is reading it out loud. The same mouths that laughed at you are now choking on your name because the universe turned their whispers into sirens. That's the reality shaking the streets right now. Your exit wasn't quiet. It was the alarm that triggered their collapse. They believed your presence didn't matter, that if you walked away, the room would keep spinning like nothing changed. But the moment you left, everything cracked open. You weren't just another face in the crowd, you were the balance beam holding up the structure. They mocked you like you were irrelevant, but the whole time, they were leaning on your stability. And when you finally stepped out, the walls trembled. Their masks began to slip. The illusions they had built so carefully started shattering in real time. Imagine a building propped up by one hidden support beam. The people inside laugh at the beam, insult it, dismiss it as useless. Then one day the beam is removed and the ceiling caves in. That was you. The stabilizer they mocked, the pillar they underestimated. And when you walked away, their collapse didn't come slowly. It came instantly. They thought your absence meant weakness, but your absence screamed louder than their lies. Your exit exposed what they had been hiding all along, that without you, their story had no shield, no distraction, no scapegoat. As long as you were in the room, they could point fingers, twist narratives, blame you for everything. But when you left, they were forced to face themselves, and what they saw in the mirror terrified them. Here's the irony: you didn't drag them, you didn't air out secrets, you didn't seek revenge, you simply walked away, and still, your absence was louder than any words could be. People began to question the lies. They noticed the cracks, they saw the imbalance. Your silence made more noise than their entire campaign, and now they're restless. They can't explain why everything feels shaky, why support keeps slipping, why people they counted on are suddenly second-guessing them. They don't realize it yet, but you were the foundation, and without you, the whole structure was destined to collapse. Think about this. Sometimes the loudest statement you'll ever make is leaving the room, not in anger, not in drama, but in quiet strength. Your exit was the alarm clock they couldn't shut off, and it shook everything they thought was secure. So let me ask you, have you noticed how your absence has more weight than your presence ever did? Doesn't it feel strange how the silence you carry now echoes louder than the noise they once made about you? That's not coincidence, that's power. If you know your exit was the trigger that woke people up, drop a 10 in the comments. It's your reminder that leaving isn't weakness, it's sometimes the strongest move you can make. The same mouths that laughed at you are now choking on your name because the universe turned their whispers into sirens. That's the reality shaking the streets right now. They turned your scars into their stage props, but now the universe is billing them for every penny they stole. They cashed in on your pain, built reputations on your lowest moments, wore your struggles like costumes, and for a while, the crowd clapped. But borrowed glory never lasts. Think about how twisted it was. They exaggerated your heartbreak, spun your setbacks into stories, told your journey without permission, and painted themselves as heroes, martyrs, or misunderstood saints. They twisted your silence into their stage, using your name as currency to buy sympathy, attention, or status. And the world bought tickets, believing their performance. But here's the truth. Foundations built on stolen bricks always collapse. They stacked their fake mansion with the stones of your suffering, but now those same stones are crumbling beneath their feet. Because lies don't age well, and performances always lose their audience when the script falls apart. Imagine a thief building a house with bricks stolen from someone else's home. Every brick is one of your scars. Every stone is one of your struggles. The house looks impressive for a while, but when the cracks appear, the entire thing collapses. That's exactly what's happening to them. The walls are breaking, the audience is leaving, and the mask is falling. Here's what makes it worse: they thought people would never see the difference, but now the dots are connecting. Friendships are dissolving. Support is thinning. Conversations grow awkward when your name comes up because the truth doesn't match their stories. The loudest victims are being exposed as the loudest liars, and the pity party they hosted is over. And here's the cruel irony: they thought your scars made you weak, but your scars became witnesses, witnesses that don't stay silent forever. Every mark on your life testifies louder than their rehearsed lines. And now the same audience that once pitied them is realizing they were fooled. The spotlight isn't flattering them anymore, it's exposing them. You never needed to expose their lies. The lies exposed themselves. Time peeled away their script, and now the raw truth is unavoidable. Their downfall isn't random, it's repayment. Every tear they tried to monetize is now collecting interest. The universe is balancing the books. and the overdraft fees are brutal. Think about it, how many times did they claim to be the wounded ones, the misunderstood ones, while you carried the real weight in silence? How many times did they profit from your struggle while you were rebuilding from scratch? Doesn't it feel like the roles are finally reversing, like the receipts are finally being cashed in? And maybe you've noticed it, how restless they are, how paranoid, how quick to panic when conversations shift. That's the weight of truth. That's the bill they can't avoid paying. They turned your pain into their paycheck, but now the debt collectors are knocking, and the currency is karma. So let me ask you, have you seen it? The way the pity they begged for is drying up, the way their spotlight is turning harsh, the way their audience is walking out. That's not coincidence. That's justice. If you've witnessed this kind of reversal in your own life, drop a prize in the comments. It's your reminder that what's stolen always comes due, and what's built on your back eventually collapses in front of everyone. The same mouths that laughed at you are now choking on your name because the universe turned their whispers into sirens. That's the reality shaking the streets right now. The cover-up always screams louder than the crime. Betrayal hurts, but what really shocks people is how many hands worked overtime to bury the evidence. The silence around you wasn't neutrality, it was participation. Think back. The lies came too clean, the reactions too rehearsed, the silence too synchronized. That's because it wasn't just one person twisting the knife. It was a whole network, a pact of whispers, a collective agreement to paint over the smoke stains of a burning house. They didn't just witness the fire, they covered it with buckets of paint, pretending the air wasn't suffocating you. But fires always leave a smell, and now that stench is spreading through the whole town. People are realizing it wasn't just the betrayal that broke you, it was the conspiracy of silence that made it possible. Here's the truth. Comfort is easier than courage. Protecting reputations is safer than speaking truth. So they gaslit you. They told you you were too sensitive. They brushed off your pain. All the while, they were protecting the guilty. They thought if they stayed silent long enough, the story would die. But silence doesn't bury truth, it fertilizes it. And now it's growing wild, breaking through every cover they laid down. Imagine this, a neighborhood where one house catches fire. Instead of calling the fire department, the neighbors gather with paintbrushes to cover the smoke. They think if they paint it pretty, nobody will notice the flames. But smoke has a way of seeping through walls, filling lungs, and choking everyone nearby. That's what's happening now. The smoke they tried to hide is spreading through their own lives, exposing every hand that held a brush. And here's the brutal part, their silence is being exposed as guilt. Not passive guilt, active guilt. Because when you choose to cover lies, you share the weight of those lies. People are connecting dots now. They're realizing the cover-up was bigger than the crime itself. And the shame is collective. Friendships that look solid are breaking. Alliances are falling apart. The fake loyalty they built is dissolving like cheap glue. And the spotlight isn't just on the one who betrayed you, it's on every enabler who guarded the betrayal like it was treasure. The town isn't gossiping anymore, it's waking up. And waking up is louder than any whisper. Because once people realize they were manipulated, once they see the strings behind the puppet show, the whole performance loses its magic. What once seemed believable now looks pathetic. And the very ones who thought they were protecting themselves by staying silent look just as guilty as the original liar. So let me ask you, doesn't it sting when you realize it wasn't just one knife in your back, but a dozen hands holding it steady? Doesn't it hit differently when you see that silence was the real weapon, sharper than words? That's why the exposure feels so heavy right now, because complicity is collapsing along with the crime. And here's your reminder, you didn't need to drag them into the light. The truth is dragging them there on its own. And when it does, it doesn't just expose the betrayer, it exposes the whole chain of silence that made the betrayal possible. If this part hits home, drop a dump in the comments. It's your way of saying you've seen through the cover-up, and you know silence is never neutral, it always screams. The same mouths that laughed at you are now choking on your name because the universe turned their whispers into sirens. That's the reality shaking the streets right now. They can't rest because your presence was the test they failed in front of everyone. You weren't just passing through their lives like a shadow. You were the checkpoint, the exam that revealed who they truly were when no one else was watching. And instead of showing empathy, they failed loud, failed cruel, failed arrogantly. Think of a classroom. The teacher doesn't say a word, just places the test on every desk. You sit quietly, minding your own paper. But they start cheating, mocking, laughing, tossing answers around like nothing matters. They think they've beaten the system, but when the grades come back, their paper is bleeding red ink. Every lie circled, every cruelty exposed. That's what life did to them. You weren't a punishment, you were the test, and they failed. They told themselves their silence was wisdom, their betrayal was strategy, their cruelty was strength. But the universe doesn't grade on excuses, it grades on truth. And the truth is written in their restlessness now. They toss at night, heart racing at the sound of a notification. Every phone call feels like exposure. Every delay feels like punishment. Every whisper around them feels like someone connecting the dots. Why? Because guilt is louder than any outside consequence. Their soul knows what they did. Their spirit won't stop screaming the grade they earned. Failure. Here's the irony: they prayed for your absence. They wanted you gone, erased, silent. But when you stepped back, your absence left them alone with the only voice they couldn't silence, their conscience. They thought peace would return without you. Instead, their peace evaporated, replaced by paranoia, because they didn't just mistreat you, they mistreated their own test. And once you fail a test like that, you don't get a retake. Imagine it like this: a mirror placed right in front of them. When you were around, they could distract themselves, point at you, twist narratives. But once you left, that mirror stayed. Every time they look into it, they see their failure reflected back. No excuses, no distractions, just guilt staring them down. And here's the part that burns most: they know they'll never outrun it, because you weren't their punishment, you were their chance. You were their opportunity to show kindness, loyalty, humanity. But they chose ego instead, and that's why their conscience won't let them rest. Ask yourself this: haven't you felt the shift? How the people who wronged you can't look you in the eye anymore. How their voices tremble when your name surfaces. That's not coincidence. That's the echo of failure. That's their spirit remembering the test they failed. And maybe you've noticed, too, how peace follows you, but not them. You moved on, you healed, you rose, but they're stuck, haunted by the chains they forged with their own choices. Their energy feels restless, brittle, unstable because they know what they did. They can't admit it, but they know. So let me ask you, don't you feel the weight of this? Doesn't it make sense now why they can't rest? Why they scroll at midnight? Why they flinch at shadows? Because the test they failed is stamped permanent, and no amount of pretending will erase it. If this resonates, drop a 1 in the comments. It's your reminder that your presence wasn't a burden, it was a test. And the way they treated you wrote their grade in ink that can't be erased. The same mouths that laughed at you are now choking on your name, because the universe turned their whispers into sirens. That's the reality shaking the streets right now. Your breakout wasn't just you leaving. It was a blackout that shattered their entire system of control. They thought they had you trapped, boxed in, tied to their narrative. But the moment you unplugged, the grid went dark, and their whole empire flickered out. Don't underestimate what happened when you walked away. This wasn't simply leaving a toxic circle. This was pulling the root out of an entire network of lies, manipulation, and dependency. They had built structures around you socially, emotionally, even spiritually, assuming you'd stay stuck, confused, and compliant. But when you broke free, it wasn't a whisper, it was an explosion. Imagine a city secretly powered by one hidden generator. Everyone mocks the machine, calling it irrelevant. But one day, the plug is pulled. Streetlights flicker out, doors stop working, alarms blare, chaos spreads. That was you. The generator they dismissed, the quiet power source they never respected. The second you unplugged, their entire system collapsed. Your compassion once covered them. Your silence shielded them. Even your forgiveness bought them time. They were feeding off your stability, draining your light, and disguising your energy as their own. And yet they mocked you, while secretly depending on the very presence they couldn't replicate. That's why your breakout was more than an exit, it was exposure. The blackout showed who was leaning on you the whole time. Without you, their grip crumbled, their alliances scattered, their influence dried up, the fake support they bragged about dissolved like mist. And now they're scrambling, wondering why doors keep slamming shut, why opportunities slip away, why confusion surrounds them like a storm cloud. Here's the reason: their entire system only worked because you were inside it. They mistook your patience for weakness, your forgiveness for ignorance, your stability for obligation. But once you stepped away, the mask fell, and now everyone can see who was the real source of energy the whole time. And here's the most brutal part: you didn't need to expose them. You didn't rant or scream or drag names through the mud. You just left, quietly, cleanly. And that quiet absence did more damage than any words ever could. Think about this. Doesn't it feel different now? Doesn't it feel lighter without their chaos in your space? That's because freedom isn't just leaving them behind, it's unplugging their access to you. And once you unplug, they can't recharge on your light anymore. And maybe you've already noticed their obsession hasn't stopped. Even though you're gone, they can't stop circling, can't stop watching, can't stop replaying your name in their minds. Why? Because your freedom exposed them. Your breakout was the proof they never had control. You were never their prisoner, you were their power source. And once you left, the lights went out. So let me ask you, have you felt that shift? The way your absence forced their collapse? The way your silence screamed louder than their noise? That's not luck, that's divine timing. If this resonates, drop a press in the comments. Let it be your reminder that your freedom isn't just survival, it's the blackout that proves you were the source all along. The same mouths that laughed at you are now choking on your name because the universe turned their whispers into sirens. That's the reality shaking the streets right now. In their obsession to frame you, they forgot the first rule of cover-ups: wash your own hands. They were so determined to make you look guilty that they didn't notice they were leaving their own fingerprints all over the crime scene. They rehearsed stories, manipulated narratives, whispered in back rooms, and twisted every angle to paint you as unstable, dramatic, or dishonest. Anything to keep the spotlight fixed on your supposed flaws. But desperation makes people sloppy, and sloppiness leaves trails. Imagine someone planting fake evidence at a crime scene, feeling victorious only to drop their own wallet on the way out. That's exactly what happened here. Their lies piled up so high, they couldn't keep track anymore. They told too many versions to too many people, and now the contradictions are stacking like receipts, spilling out of a broken drawer. They underestimated everyone. They thought people wouldn't remember details, wouldn't connect dots, wouldn't notice the cracks. But the truth has patience, and truth always circles back. Now, conversations are surfacing where their stories don't match, their timelines don't line up, their words are being dissected, and the contradictions are too loud to ignore. Here's what they never realized: the more they tried to bury you, the deeper they dug their own grave. Because the spotlight isn't on you anymore, it's on them. And once people started looking closely, the mask split, the manipulation became obvious. The fruit of their schemes rotted in plain sight. And here's the twist: you didn't have to push for this. You didn't call them out. You didn't demand justice. You healed. You moved forward. And while you were building your next chapter, their own words became the rope tightening around them. They tried to bury you with dirt, but the dirt they threw stuck to their own hands. And now everyone sees the stains. Think about it. Have you noticed how fast masks slip when people try too hard to hide? How cracks always show when pressure builds? That's because lies aren't sustainable. Truth has a way of pulling receipts at exactly the right time. So let me ask you, doesn't it feel almost poetic? The very people who obsessed over exposing you are now exposed themselves. The ones who thought they were in control of the narrative are now trapped in their own contradictions. That's not chance. That's the universe making sure fingerprints always tell the real story. If this hits home, drop a 1 in the comments. It's your reminder that you never needed to fight for exposure. The truth leaves fingerprints, and those prints always point back to the guilty. The same mouths that laughed at you are now choking on your name because the universe turned their whispers into sirens. That's the reality shaking the streets right now. They thought they buried your story like a footnote, but the universe made you the headline in bold print. They treated you as disposable, tried to erase you like a typo, rewrote your role, and deleted your survival from their script. But here's the twist: they forgot you weren't a typo. You were the story all along. Truth doesn't rot underground. It roots. It grows. Imagine a seed buried in dirt, stomped on, dismissed as dead. But instead of decaying, it sprouted quietly in silence. And one day, It broke through the surface, green, undeniable, unstoppable. That's you. What they thought was burial was actually planting. What they thought was the end was only the beginning of your bloom. Now your story is spreading like wildfire. People who once mocked you can't stop hearing your name. The very rooms they tried to lock you out of are now echoing with your presence. Your survival has become the loudest headline, and no matter how much they resist, they can't scroll past it, mute it, or erase it. And here's the irony, they don't even control the conversation anymore. The narrative they built collapsed the second you rose, because truth always finds a way to break through edits and spin, and your quiet consistency has turned louder than their loudest lies. Ask yourself this: why is your story resurfacing now, after all this time? Because truth doesn't stay buried. It resurfaces, it demands attention, and it drowns out the noise of gossip. That's why people are waking up, connecting dots, realizing your consistency never matched their smear campaigns. And maybe you've noticed it, the ones who once laughed at you now watch in silence. The people who once doubted can't deny your growth. The same halls that echoed with mockery now echo with your name in reverence. That isn't random. That's destiny flipping the script. Here's the verdict. You won. Your silence was strategy. Your healing was power. Your survival became the headline. They wanted you forgotten, but the universe made you unforgettable. They thought their whispers would bury you, but instead, those whispers became sirens blasting through every corner of the streets. So let me ask you, can you feel it? That pull in your chest that tells you this message is not just entertainment, it's confirmation. If it resonates, drop a sit in the comments. Not for me, for you. As your public declaration that you know your story is headline worthy, no matter who tried to erase it. And before we close, remember this: oversubscription is real. More souls than ever are tapping in, connecting, aligning with this mission. And if you haven't yet, pour a little light back, press like, subscribe, or share this message. Every click helps spread truth into the dark corners where envy hides. The same mouths that laughed at you are now choking on your name because the universe turned their whispers into sirens. That's the reality shaking the streets right now.